Hi, and welcome to Conscious Talk TV show, and I'm your host, Linda Summers, and today's topic is defining unconditional self-love with Kelly Marie. And Kelly teaches people to heal their whole life, and I'd like to welcome Kelly back to the show. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Linda. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
You're welcome, and thanks for really coming back, and because we tapped a little bit into the self-love last week, but we really want to dive into it because as you and I talk, this is like your baby, and this is what I'm realizing is the basis, the foundation for, as we were talking about the other day, for everything. Like I'm learning more and more from you and how I thought I already knew what self-love was, and to some degree I don't at all. And so I think this is a great opportunity to be talking about this and really having you really go into depth of what that really means. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely the basis for, it's kind of the grounding. It's kind of the clearing out the perspective so you can see clearly and kind of navigate life without the filters that keep you from knowing what that is. So yeah, it's kind of redefining it in a more specific way, not just in the idea of love itself, because there's all different versions of love.
Yeah. So
this is kind of defining kind of the grounding, the heart of knowing that this is the structure on which everything is built, the clarity in which brings balance forth. So yeah, it's the definite foundation for well-beingness is to understand the unconditionalness of the self-love, which is different than just a nice fuzzy feeling. So exactly. Yeah, I'd love to just kind of, from my perspective, and always others can disagree with it, not a problem.
Yeah.
From the way I speak of it, it is kind of clearly defining it into maybe something that most people are not familiar with, hearing it described this way. So the unconditional part is the major part of the self-love in which I'm speaking that to define more specifically. The self-love itself is finding that well-beingness in the self. But it's the unconditionalness of the self-love that makes all of the balance come from that. And so what I mean by unconditional is, well, first of all, the self-love is that wholeness, that sovereign feeling, that the free will, it's a frequency, it's an alignment, it's being in a receptive state of the self. And what keeps us from being that is the conditionalness of your life. In other words, conditionally looking through life with the lenses of a lot of beliefs that may be out of alignment with what your inner self would say, or the unconditionalness of the self. So that would be things like, what I call them is the filters, the debris in which we kind of con ourselves into to navigating life with, well, I need to have a lot of money, or I need to be successful, I have to work really hard to get it, or all of the things that we must do. And being stuck in those perspectives, insisting on that perspective, and instead of letting things be. And sometimes that keeps the motivation in a direction on us doing things but actually kind of redefining on why we're doing those things. In other words, what are we buying into that makes us think that's who we are? So it kind of clouds you on actually seeing who you are really, and what really excites you, and what really motivates you, because you're so stuck on certain perspectives based on what society says you should have, or how you think things should be. So you act out of that limited perspective, right, not even realizing that there's another way of looking at it, and that you're actually being motivated by some lack mentality rather than a holistic approach. Mm-hmm. Is that clear at this point to you? I mean, what do you understand of that, Linda?
Yeah, so that we are, we have our own beliefs and from society that prevent us from actually being able to just be with where we're at, And to know that if we know that we have, like, to really, what's our motivation? What really makes us happy, as opposed to, I have to do this because this is what, is the protocol. This is what society says, versus checking in with myself and saying, what's true for me? What do I feel that makes me happy, that lights me up, as opposed to thinking what somebody else might be saying and telling me what really is the way life should be.
Exactly, and what you've bought into about what I should have, and I can only have, or feeling your limitation when, oh, I can't do this because it takes a lot of money to do this, and I don't have a lot of money, therefore I can't do it. without realizing there's a lot of ways to be able to do what you think you are, if you just kind of expand out your perspective on what you're really going after what you really want to experience. But you're focused on, I can't have it, stubbornly thinking that way, which keeps you from realizing that there's other ways to experience that very thing. So yeah, it kind of clouds our perspective, and we stay in kind of very limited places because we get so out of touch with who we really are, because we're so guided by what others think, or the judgments that we have on ourselves, or I have to be a particular way, society says this. There's a lot of beliefs that are out of alignment that usually cause us to want certain things, and we start acting on that, not recognizing that there's a lot more going on. And if you really had that self-love, if you really had yourself filled up with who you are, you wouldn't want most of that. Most of what we think we want is driven by the fact that we think we will feel better in the fact of having this. So we run around trying to get these things from the outside world. If I have a lot of money, if I have, a major successful career, I will feel better. If I have this perfect relationship, I will feel better. If, it's all these ifs and buts, but that keep from saying I'm happy right now. But it usually comes from lack of self-love, lack of that wholeness of self, lack of everything is okay right now. That, always chasing after something keeps you from being content right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the unconditionalness of self-love. And in that state, when you're balanced, when you fill yourself up, and that's an ongoing journey that we're going to do for the rest of our life. Yeah. So there's never an end of the road, everything is going to
never arrive.
Yeah. So it's always, we're in a complicated environment. There's always things to consider and rework and rethink and allow ourselves to feel good, even within conflict.
Yeah.
But learning how to be you and actually finding your self-value within yourself, finding your wholeness. And right now, everything can be fine right now. Do I want certain things? Yes. We're always going to have things that we want, but that doesn't stop us from being okay with whatever's going on. Even amongst conflict, you can still feel good. And because the purpose of the conflict, or you're getting the gift from what's coming up. So again, when you let yourself off the hook and you stop judging yourself so much and be a little bit more unconditional about it. Yeah. In other words, without conditions. Love without conditions. In other words, even when I make mistakes, I'm learning from it. Approval of the self and letting yourself know who you are, what's actually bubbling up to what I really, really want. And here's the thing is we've got so many indicators inside of us, so many navigational tools to be able to discern what that is. Mm-hmm. So the emotions are those. They're little red flags. If you're feeling frightened, scared, upset, frustrated, angry, those are red flags saying you're out of alignment to yourself. Mm-hmm. When you're feeling expansiveness and wholeness and joy and excitement, you're in balance with the self. But the only way you can actually discern that clearly is to get all of the filters, all of the conditions out of the way, and not be motivated by the conditions, and feeling good now and letting this moment be a good moment. nothing is wrong. I don't have to fix everything this moment. I'm always learning. I'm always moving towards that which I'm wanting. I don't have to have all of these conditions met. I'm okay right now. Allows you to kind of discern out the judgments, the filters, the things that are out of alignment with the well-beingness and wholeness. So when you're feeling joy and excitement and peacefulness, that is balance. That is who you are naturally. Anything outside of that is out of alignment. So, but you have to be able to feel it first. So that's a lot of the journey itself, is kind of getting rid of the stuff that stands in the way of that feeling. And so that unconditionalness is so important, to be able to distinguish from the conditions, so you can see, what do I really want? And you can just feel your way through that. So a lot more paying attention to, how do I feel about this? And why? So you start asking more questions about, what is this that I really want, and why do I want it? Does this make me feel good, or do I feel like if I don't have this, that something will be wrong? I'm not working hard enough, or, how much judgment are you having? Because that will cloud your vision. And the unconditional aspect, when you're letting everything be okay, you'll see clearly, because the emotions that pop up, why, what's standing in the way. And then you can work on those things and kind of expand them out to a broader perspective. And if I don't feel like I have this, and I feel like this is needed for me to feel good, how can I change that perspective, or even allow myself to have that? How can I see that, why am I needing that first? And why do I believe that that is going to be more important? So it kind of lets you define yourself from a clear perspective. But it's very difficult to let go of the conditioning. Because where, it's kind of, the beliefs are what you put your trust and faith in at any given moment. And we've learned that over a lifetime of what other people have told us, what we believe ourselves, what we've looked at others and judged, and how we're viewing everything is based on where you are right now with what you've acquired to this moment. And this is what I believe, I trust and put my faith in. This is who I am. We're always defining ourselves as something. So when people are asked to kind of let go of those beliefs, people kind of get a little panicky over that, because first of all, you're kind of taking my identity away. When you value something so strongly, it's threatening their identity. And that's why people get defensive and judgmental, and, nobody wants to be judged. They want to be free to be themselves. Yet how often are we actually doing that for others? Because we're constantly judging the world around us. So we're all doing it. And so, us too, everybody is kind of judging, what we want and what we don't want. But when you can get to a point where you see everything as valuable, and when you're not defining, this is the good stuff and this is the bad stuff, but seeing both as being the gift for you, because you get to look at, what does it mean to you personally? So it doesn't matter if this is good or bad. This is what I prefer. This is what I'd rather not experience. But a lot of the times the unwanted pushes us towards things that we do want, and we're able to kind of work towards that because of something coming up. It's that steady keel to where you can be very clear on why you're doing what you're doing, and to kind of keep a clear perspective, and finding that centered place, that equilibrium inside yourself, where you are receptive, where you are receptive to that inner voice, where you are in a synchronistic energy that lines up, when you're in that same energy as yourself, and there's no resistance to it. In other words, because if you're like seeing yourself as limited, you're literally pinching the energy off of yourself. So you're not having as much energy. You're not in that alignment with self, because you're not in the vibrational vicinity where that peacefulness is. So when you're feeling really good and you make an intent on wanting something to be good, and then something around you distracts you, it literally lowers your vibration, and you're not receptive to that inner voice showing you exactly what the next step is.
Right.
So that unconditional self-love. And some would say that's a very selfish thing to do because they're saying, oh, you're just self-focused. You're only into, we have enough selfish people in the world. Why are you trying to be, trying to say that people need to be in self-love and accept everything as good when we don't agree with that. There's a lot of bad things, and that what's wrong with pointing at the bad things? And in a way, that's true, but what you'll realize is that unconditional self-love is the most loving thing that you can do for everybody, including yourself, because it keeps you from that judgment. It keeps you letting somebody else have their journey, and you don't have to put your judgment on that. They're able to be them, and you're able to be you, and you learning how to be the best you can be. Right. You get in the vibration of unconditional love, which means you're in alignment with that energy, that high vibration of unconditional love. You become a conduit of that energy, and everything around you is affected. We have this fan of energy that comes in us and outside of us. There's a lot of science around the fact that we are emitting a signal. There is an energy that comes from your body and has an effect on others around you. So when you're peaceful and you're resonating that unconditionalness, you have an effect on others around you. Yeah. So you don't have to do so much, whereas a lot of us think that we have to go around changing everybody, get them to know more and be happier, and all that judgment we have on others is like, no, you just be the best you can be, and that gets emitted just by your presence. Right. You don't have to tell them how to be. It's kind of leading by example. You emit that, and that affects everything. So the purpose for that journey inward, to realize what makes us all tick, is because everybody wants people to be happy. They want peacefulness. Your natural energy is that of unconditional love. Our intent here, that's not intent actually, our natural state is unconditional love. That is where we are happiest, by people. And the resistance to that and the things around us make us less happy. It affects your physical well-being. It affects the mental state. And when we get caught up in the distortion of that, or the friction, and start trying to judge people and try to tell everybody how they should be, and that this is how they should live their life, and I wouldn't do that, we're out of that alignment, and none of us feel good because none of us are emitting that energy. Right. So not only is it good for you because you'll feel whole, balanced, and peacefulness inside, and you'll be able to kind of be very balanced when conflict does show itself, to be able to see it clearly for why it's showing up for you, but it also lets other people have that experience just by being you.
Right. And there's something else that you brought up too that I thought was really important that I wrote down, is how we, think that other people know, like an example that we talked about the other day is in the marketing field, and when you're trying to market your business or whatever, that everybody, that we put our faith and trust in them, thinking that they know exactly what's best for us. And so that we kind of give them our power and allow them to be able to, know what's best for us, basically. When in actuality, we know that if you really kind of check in with yourself, right? So if I'm checking with myself and realize, like I talked to you the other day when we were talking, saying that, hey, for me, I don't operate that way. That doesn't feel good for me. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so if we can, the reason I bring that up is because I think that society has taught us to, there's all these people out there that know how to do it, right? This is how we do it. And so I think what you're saying is that when we go within ourselves and we love ourselves unconditionally, that we can find out really what's important to us. So how do I operate? Does that work for me? And again, I think that's really important as to why. Why do I even want to do that? I mean, so it starts to bring up a lot of questions, and then you kind of get on shaky ground, and you're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this?
Yes, because we're not used to thinking that way. We're not used to, always focusing on the outside world or conforming to somebody else's opinion, or their opinion is much more valuable than mine. I must listen to them because I don't feel like I have all the answers.
Right.
And 100% everybody I talk to feels the same way. We all have our parts of us that we don't value very much and our disapproval, because both of us, all of us, are both loving and full of fear. You know, we have that duality inside of us. So most people are ashamed of those darker points of view. So, and they don't admit it. You know, it's like kind of cover that up. You know, nobody know about that part of me. I'm only gonna talk about the very loving things that people will approve of, and keep that other part. But that's why we devalue ourselves, because I'm fully aware of my darkness. You know, that, you know, I have thought bad things before, but in that lack of approval of that judgment upon it, feels like I don't know all the answers right now, and everybody else looks more important than I do.
Right.
And a lot of us don't feel our own self-worth, so we're constantly looking for approval and validation from others.
Right.
And so it's really important to not devalue the conflict even within yourself, and that's normal. I mean, you are both aspects. You need to be, because one helps you discern the other.
Right.
So is to don't feel bad about having those thoughts, because naturally you're going to choose to feel good. That's our natural highest energy. That's the one where we feel the best in. We feel the worst when we're separate, alone, scared, and feeling hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
We have all ways of experiencing both aspects of the self. So one is not, it doesn't make it better or worse, it makes all of it valuable. Right. So you don't need to say, I have to have pure thoughts all the time to be a very loving person. That's kind of discrediting half of your tools that you have to discern things with. So it's devaluing the self. And so when you can realize that everybody has those thoughts, and understand the self a little bit more, that you'll be able to, wait a minute, what do I think about this? Let me really see what I want and why I want it and what feels good to me, instead of constantly handing that over for somebody else. This is about finding your value and realize that we are all valuable when you become yourself, and you are your best self that you can be. That's enough. That's all you need to be. That's, you know, life is meaningless. We get to put the meaning in life. There is no predestined agenda for us. You know, what do you want to experience, and try to be the best self you can be. If you want to change the world, stop saying that something's wrong with the world, and recognize that I need to be better within me, and send that energy out. And that's what helps the world, is to see and working out for the world. Send the energy that everything is just fine into the world, because that's sending the energy of the, you know, everything working out there. But if you focus on what's wrong, you're actually enlivening the energy of what's wrong. You're focusing on what's imbalanced rather than allowing the balance to be there.
Right. So what you're saying too is because we're all part of the collective. So whatever we're doing, that we're creating part of what's out there as we consider as to be wrong. So if that's why Gandhi says, you know, be the change you want to be. So what you're saying is, if you're being the change and you are loving yourself and doing what's best for you, then that's actually adding to the collective, which is best for the collective as well. So if everybody does that, then we can actually have a different world.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when you're sending out that energy of unconditional love for the self, you know, you become a conduit of that, and that's it's dispersing into the environment. You don't have to do, you know, you be the best you, and that actually is having an effect. And you sending out the thoughts of everything working out of what you want to see. And but if you're focusing on problems and you're trying to control everybody else's details, you are enlivening that. So what you focus on the most is what you experience. Right. So if you spend your time focusing on what's wrong, you'll just get a lot of that in your life, and you offer that out.
So how could, you know, because we've got an entire world of 7 billion people. So what tips or advice that can you say that can help people? Because I know it's loving yourself, but with so many people, what is a way to be able to work through whatever is coming up, you know, if we're, because we are, there's so many people, because we have the media, we have so much on the external that, you know, radio, TV, and all of this, you know, ways that we're hearing all this stuff. It's like people are saying, well, how can I not? Because I've got all this on the external that's happening. How can I not? And so what can I do? So what would you say for people that, you know, kind of feel like, okay, I'm trying not to focus on that. I don't want to focus on that. So what do I do?
Yeah, that's like a complicated one. It's not complicated, it's just long. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is the first step. And to just say unconditional self-love, I think it's got just, this is really the foundation of you and finding clarity within the self. So the journey to the self and actually getting rid of the filters that throw you off balance helps you with that, allowing everybody to be themselves. And so it doesn't feel so huge to you, what's going on in the world itself. You can kind of ride on top of that and not get so into the chaos of what's going on, into the details, in other words. So you can really get a good balance of centeredness within the self, and then say that footing, that grounding into yourself. Let's see, how can I kind of say this short? It helps you to not get so involved in the details of other people's intolerances or judgments to what's going on, or falling victim to being scared and terrified from what's going on, to realize that things are working out exactly the way they need to.
Right.
They always are. And when you can be at peace for yourself, you're not going to be so intimidated by what somebody else says, or worried when they're saying, oh, you don't know enough, or you're not as informed as you should be. You know, there's always something that I'm missing out on. When you have your own grounding in there, and you know who you are, and you know what motivates you and makes you tick, and you're not so threatened by the outside world, you can navigate that in a much healthier way than being so tempted to join all of this fear that's going on and the chaos that you're seeing around you, because some of the chaos that's going on is actually needed to bring about change.
Right, which we talked about last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
well, I was going to say, what I think.
You don't know.
Sorry, sorry.
Okay.
I was going to say what I wrote down was because what I heard was, if people know the benefit of why they would want to do something, then I think that makes someone want to work more towards that.
Yeah.
So if they know that, you know, by me contributing to the collective, it begins with me. So what can I do with me? And that's loving myself unconditionally. That affects the collective. That can shift the collective as well. So I think that's where it lies, is it seems like the benefits of why would I want to do this? Because we're such in a world of convenience, you know, give it to me now, I want to do it now, which I can attest to that. And so it's like, what is the benefit for us to be able to do that as a collective?
And so here's the thing, is if you don't know who you are and what makes you tick, and you're in the center place within the self, you can get very confused by the collective, by what's going on in the world. So you want to get a clear idea of who you are and what's making you tick and what your motivations is and your well-being is, so you're not so influenced by the stuff around you. Mm-hmm. So it keeps that balance within the self. So you know who you are within all of this conflict that's going on. So people can be however they are, but you don't have to be so intimidated by the world that, you know, it keeps you out of the fear of the world, and it keeps you in that peaceful place in your life. So it always starts there, and then you can join the world and get involved with what they're doing, you know. But if you don't have an idea of who you are, you can get swept up in the world very much. And a lot of us do, and that's why we keep on changing from idea to idea to idea, is because we don't really know what's motivating us. We're letting the outside world dictate who we are. So it's time for us to learn who we are really, and get a good base of who you are and that well-beingness inside of you, and then deal with the outside world. So it's really worthwhile to check in with yourself first, find what it means, like, you know, what your energy feels like, And then you cannot be so bothered by the outside world, because it's the judgment and the imbalance that's pulling everybody in all kinds of different directions.
So when things come up, you know, because people are going to have things that are going to come up, right? So when we're delving into loving ourselves, because I wrote down when you had talked in the very beginning about, you know, how we're giving, we think everybody else, you know, in our careers and whatever, that we're giving, thinking that they know better about us than we know about ourselves. Because the truth is that we really do know, but if we're not in that space of knowing, it's a little hard to see that, right? So when things are starting to come up for people, because then it's like, okay, well, if I'm loving myself and I have things coming up, how, you know, what would you say to people that, you know, that things are going to come up for them? And when we start diving into this journey, that's not so pleasant, right? So what do we do?
Yeah. It always starts with that. And when you do make this intent and start looking at yourself, you'll realize that the resistance does come up.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are very disturbed by what's coming up, but it's kind of a good thing that it's coming up for you to rework it.
Right.
But there's, how do you do that? It's so unique for each person, but doing, let's see, as far as like the meditations, you know, which I was talking about, the breathing, to stop the thoughts themselves. So always a good place to do is recognize that it's your thoughts that are kind of standing in the way of that balance. So kind of stop the thinking, do a meditation, or learn how to get centered within, quiet the mind down. Because a lot of these thoughts that we have are actually a lot of judgments or a lot of perspectives, a lot of expectations about how things should be. So
Right.
when you kind of quiet the mind and line up with that inner voice, the direction starts showing itself. You are guided in a direction because the ideas will come up. So you have to get to a place where you can be good now. In other words, allow this moment to be a good moment.
Yeah.
So stopping the thinking helps. That's a good starting place, is to recognize how much the thoughts are actually keeping you from that experience. When you recognize that the thing that's keeping you out of it is by listening to the judgment of others, you know, you might want to start listening to other people who are actually speaking of unconditional love for the self. If you need help, if you are just trying to line up and be connected to yourself, can you get all this information inside of you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you need anybody to tell you what to do? No. Just get into alignment with the self, and you have your own guidance that will come through and support you and help you on this journey. So find somebody that you resonate with. You know, start listening to others, but don't kind of hand over that they have all of the answers either. Kind of, what does this mean to me personally? Start asking the questions to yourself. How do I feel about this? So
Right.
you're going to have to start learning how to trust your own feelings, because the feelings that you have give you all of the answers.
Yeah.
So do I feel fear? Do I feel anger? Do I feel afraid? You know, once you identify those lower vibrating feelings,
Yeah.
and start asking yourself, why would I feel that way?
Yeah.
Why
We've got a
do
couple minutes left on the show, so we probably want to wrap up a little bit. But I think trust is a huge thing, what you're talking about.
learning self-trust?
Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm learning that myself as well. And I think that if we can, I really think that when you're talking about self-love, it's going back to what really is what's true for you, right? And knowing if that resonates with you, whatever is happening, whatever the situation is, whether it be outside circumstances, whether it be your own life. It's just, we're going to have to continue on part 2 because this is such a huge topic and there's so much to talk about. And I know, and thank you everybody for joining us today too. Appreciate it. And I want to get, we get some testimonials for next week. Hopefully we can dive into that, but we can really continue on because there was something else you said that I really wanted to talk about too, as far as circumstances that come to you when you are in that place of self-love, that I love what you said about that, where, you know, things just kind of open up. And, but it really is, it's getting to that place and really knowing what that place is and what it feels like to be there. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and recognizing what keeps you out of it. so yeah, it's very important. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
This is one of those topics that you can talk about for a long time.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We really greatly appreciate having you here. And Kelly will be back next week for part 2 to really dive more into this and really talk more about what it looks like in deeper, you know, we talked a lot actually, but to dive a little bit more